Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello and welcome to the Money and You show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and as always these days, I have a fantastic guest. I'm so excited about the guest this year, and very exciting group that we have on. I hope you're listening to the podcast. They're very diverse, and you'll learn a lot about career transition, business growth, and money in each one of them from very different perspectives. And I want to just bring up, it's the beginning of the year, but already we're close to the end of January. So I don't know what you're doing about your goals for the year, your plan for the year. It's really important that you don't give up on your goals. And if you haven't set any goals yet, there's still plenty of time. And it's always time to set goals if you don't have them, but we're still in January, so it's a really perfect time. And I want to just say, here at Limit Free Life, we do goal setting a little differently. So we start with your vision and your why and the feelings that you want to have from achieving those goals. Because, of course, we set goals and we want things because of how they're going to make us feel, not necessarily because of the thing itself. So we want to identify those. And then as we're building our goals for the year, we can keep using those as filters to make sure we're making the right decisions that are going to actually take us to those feelings and provide us those feelings in the end. So I just want to, then we get to our goal setting and our strategies and our actions, and also to setting up a framework where you have a growth environment that you can check with yourself on a regular basis and track and measure and make sure that you're staying motivated and staying on plan. So I just wanted to let you know we do have a goal setting workshop that we've done already once this year. We're going to have it as a full day VIP sort of day on Saturday, February 5th. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me at michelle@limitfreelife.com. And let's get going. Let's start with a fabulous guest today who's going to really help, especially business owners, with money and all kinds of fascinating things around money. And her name is Mariette Martinez. And Mariette, after 20 years of working alongside small businesses as an accountant and advisor, started her entrepreneurial journey, which has evolved from practitioner to educator and guide. In 2020, Mariette became the founder of Master Your Books, a learning center that educates intentional service-based entrepreneurs that are ready to build their financial confidence, knowledge, and value from the inside out. At Master Your Books, they believe in strengthening inner value and the abundance mindset first, before a service provider can deliver true value to those they serve. Well, I couldn't agree with that more. So with that, Mariette, welcome.
Thank you so much. I always kind of giggle because I forget which bio picture I sent. So I'm wearing the same dress. There you go.
I love that.
Let's just state the obvious. Thank you for that. And by the way, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. I loved how you introduced your podcast and your show as one that's diverse, that really allows us to kind of go inward and outward about topics that maybe are not spoken in other shows. And I just previously, before we got on, was telling you that I had been stalking several of your episodes and interviews, and I can't agree more. There was so many nuggets for someone that is, intentionally wanting to step into a fulfilled life. And I just want to thank you, first of all, for having those episodes. You have magic in bringing in your guests, by the way. So awesome guests. And again, honored to be here. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That's so lovely. I really appreciate that. Really nice to hear. And I think it's a really big compliment when guests are listening to the show because I feel like I'm learning from you during these conversations. So Mariette, can you give us some background on your background and how you got to the place that you're at now?
Yes, I'd love to. So I always try to think about, is this going to be the short or the long story?
You can go long.
So I think I'll go a little bit in the middle there. So So yeah, as you mentioned, I have been in a transition from practitioner to educator over the last decade. So early on in my career, I decided to choose accounting. So I did go, I would say, the more formal route. In high school and in college, my mom, well, actually early on, all the way to the end of high school, my mom owned a chain of restaurants for over 30 years. And so I was her in-house bookkeeper. So that was my first experience of doing bookkeeping and accounting, and also really understanding the entrepreneurial life and the financial struggles of an entrepreneur. After 30 years of really striving and thriving, but also struggling as an entrepreneur, my mom decided to also transition her life, close her doors, and choose a more fulfilled route. And that for me was a game changer. I was just graduating high school and I didn't really understand what was going on. Like, I saw my mother as this thriving entrepreneur, and then all of a sudden I saw her as someone that had to just like completely change her life, close her doors, actually move away, and kind of go through this personal transition in her life. It was pretty traumatic because I knew that there was trauma happening. And I think the biggest question for me was why? Like, couldn't you have chosen to do this? Couldn't it have been smoother transition? Why did it feel so like cutthroat? You know, from one minute you have this empire and the next minute you just closed your doors. Throughout the years, we've been able to really dig deeper into that. Again, being very mindful of my mom and knowing that this was probably a very big decision for her. There was a lot of money conversations around why this happened. So honestly, the only thing I knew was there has to be a better way. Small business owners and entrepreneurs don't have to feel like there's literally only one or the other decision in regards to whether they should keep, you know, their business thriving or keep their doors open. And so that really transitioned into, I guess that's finances. So I decided to go into accounting. Again, I went the traditional route. I worked at the CPA practice all through college. I got my accounting degree. I worked in public and private accounting. It wasn't until about a decade through that journey, though, that I realized that I had gotten a lot of the technical skills. I felt very confident as an accountant, as a financial and tax accountant. What I felt I wasn't doing, which is why I'm just so honored to be here with you, Michelle, was the fulfillment and the why I even chose to do accounting. I lost that in that decade of like hustle and bustle and working crazy tax seasons and learning all of the elements of being in the accounting industry. I actually forgot why I even did this route, and something was super like pulling it at my soul. And that's when, like, about 10 years into my career, I had to pull back and say something is seriously missing here.
Wow, that is such an interesting story. I love that we have that in common with our parents, because you went through that experience with your mom. I went through that with my dad when he changed careers in the middle of his life. And, you know, when I was a teenager, and it is traumatic. It's a big, you don't really know what's going on. You just know that, you know, something's wrong with that parent, something's going on with them, and your whole life is about to change. And it really has, I think, a long-lasting impact. It's part of the reason that I do what I do, because I saw him change his career, which was really hard to do because it was such an established and successful one. Sounds like same with your mom, and do a big switch, and then the kind of financial fallout from that, which, you know, it was in the end a great decision, because he too was after more fulfillment, and it worked out. But very interesting to me to hear that story. So yeah, and I can also relate, having been a CPA and working in the accounting industry, how you do get lost. And you know, because I feel like when I went into that, I had a lot more purpose, and it was, you know, it was about a lot of things for me. And but then you work really hard as an accountant and you get lost in that, and you can't, you're sort of in the weeds and you can't really see the big picture anymore. But
so true.
Yeah. So, okay. So you moved into more of the education realm. And was that because you could see that people needed it? You know, if you're looking at people's books all the time and you're seeing you can kind of see what they don't know, actually. But what was the reason behind it?
Yeah, so it was, I always kind of laugh. I feel like I've had these like these epiphany weekends. And so, so about, like I said, 10 years into my career, I think the first thing that happened, as you said, I just want to pull back what you said, because it was so true. I was in the weeds. I was in the weeds of being an accountant. I was in the weeds of building. At that point, I actually had already stepped out of private accounting, and I started building my tax practice. So we're in 2008 now. And again, I jumped right into the virtual tax practice world. So my practice was completely virtual. I did bookkeeping, I did taxes, I did accounting. And that actually happened over a weekend, because in 2008, I actually got pulled into one of the positions I was in, one of the companies I was working for at that time. And I always laugh because I got laid off and it was on my birthday. I'll never forget. They didn't know it was my birthday. Wow. And I'm like, you know what? Thank you. Like, this is a sign. Stars are aligning. I'm feeling this pull to something different. So I started my business. And then when I started my business again, I get right back into the hustle. As you know, as an entrepreneur, it's like you go from working for someone to working for yourself, but it's even harder, like you're working harder. And so, so about 6 years in, so from 2008 to about 2014. So yeah, about 6 years in, I mean, my business was thriving. I had a team, I had a book of business. Everything felt good. I mean, from the outside in, and which is so interesting with life, right? From the outside in, or from the social media in, it all looked good. But it wasn't. I actually had another kind of epiphany weekend towards my birthday. I don't know why it happens always around May, Memorial Day weekend, maybe because I'm just like, what am I doing here? And I realized I'm about 6 years into this business. I said I wanted to focus on my why, which I did feel like I was, because now, like you said, I was focusing on small business owners, and I was a very intentional and intimate like advisor. Like, we would go into the weeds, like you said. It's like I really wanted to get into the core. When you mentioned goals and really understanding the feeling of why someone does what they do, because that's what's going to light them and fuel them to actually make big changes in their life. That was literally our first meeting in my small business. Like, you would come to a consultation and expect to talk about your tax entity or formation or, you know, planning. And I'm talking about like, let's go in, let's go all the way in. And sometimes I'd scare them a little bit. But ultimately what happened was I had these beautiful relationships with these business owners, but I would look at my impact. And honestly, Michelle, I was struggling with the impact. I felt like, so I was helping 300-400 clients, maybe. I wanted to help 3,000-4,000 people, or 300-4,000 people. And I know it felt like, and then you have that struggle, like, am I asking for too much? Is this right or wrong? Am I ungrateful to actually want to make and have more impact? And so I had this thing over actually another weekend, and I went to a retreat, and I just really asked myself, is it okay to want to impact more? And it was very transformational, because I came out of that retreat saying, yeah, like, that's great, Mariette. There's nothing wrong with you wanting to impact more, but now you're going to have to figure out how that's going to work. So that's when I started my transformation from practitioner to educator.
I love that, because it speaks so much to mindset. And, you know, what's your mindset around wanting more or wanting, you know, I find that the problem oftentimes with people is actually, you know, you ask people to kind of think bigger or think out of the box, and it's really hard to do. And all of a sudden, like you say, you'll have an epiphany and be like, oh, this is a way I can reach more people, when you can't figure it out. But then you go through, your mindset has to up level with that new vision. So did you, you know, was there any work that you did around that? Because a lot of this show is about relationship with money. So that's the other thing that comes into it. Is it okay for me to, you know, share my gifts with that many people, because that is also going to increase my income, and I want that too. And is that okay? So did you go through any of that?
Oh my gosh, I've done so much work, and that's why I honestly just respect and just have so much gratitude for what you do. The fact that you allow people to want to have fulfillment, to want to have a relationship with their money, to want to have fun, to have it all. Like, we all should be okay with having it all. But like you said, it's such a mindset thing. And it's also such a cultural thing. For the Latino community, personally, that's the only one I can speak on, really. You know, sometimes when we think that way, right away, you're perceived as being greedy. You're perceived as being ungrateful. And so again, it's that cultural upbringing, that and those limiting beliefs that, like, okay, you know what, stop what you're thinking, Mary, just be happy, you have such a good life the way it is right now. And right away you pull back. It's this constant like pulling of whether or not you're deserving of what you teach, which is fulfillment. And so yes, absolutely. I would say the first intentional development that I did was, like I said, the retreat. I didn't go to a tax conference, which I usually go to. I didn't go to an accounting conference. I didn't go to get my continued education this time. I actually went to a very transformative, soul searching retreat, which, trust me, my husband, who's a Marine, was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I need to do this. This is not." And he's like, "But you're an accountant. Why do people need to go to those kind of things?" And and I'm like, "Trust me, just let me go. Let me do this." And so since then, though, Michelle, it's constant. I have coaches. One of my dearest friends is a soul, self, and wealth doula. She's also a money coach as well. She is and God, thanking her every day that she's now my accountability partner. Nice. So she's been helping me through that. I believe in women empowerment. So I'm in a women alliance where we consistently work on our leadership as women, speaking out, building our voice, allowing ourselves to feel like we deserve what is coming up for us. So yeah, so much work on it.
Oh, I love that. But it's fun work. I do it too. And it is work, and it takes a lot of time, but it just really is, I don't know, it just elevates everything from your mood to your actual, achievements. So yeah, that's fantastic. I love hearing that. And when you were talking about accountability, I think some people will think, well, you're an accountant, you're already well-versed in money and everything else. Why would you need an accountability partner? You must already do all this stuff the way you're supposed to. So you want to just speak to that, because everybody needs an accountability partner.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. And it's so interesting. So over the last 2 years, when I started building Master Books, my learning center, my ideal, member, my learner, they're bookkeeping professionals that are stepping in and leaning into this thinking that they can design the bookkeeping business of their dreams. They can, choose what that looks like for them. They can have a number, like you said, they can set a goal and see what does that feel like. Usually at first it comes from a need, and then after that, a want, right? Yeah. So all of that is great. But what I realized first from teaching them versus me learning it for myself was that was all great at that moment, but then I loosen the reins, and then I wouldn't see anything happen. And at first it came to me and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm such a terrible teacher. Like, how, like, what's going on? Like, why is the transformation not happening? And then I realized, wait a second, I'm doing the same thing. I have a coach. I'm doing the goal setting. I'm talking about the transformation that's happening in my life, but I'm doing it consistently. We're meeting twice a month. We have every quarter, every 3 months, we have a deep dive on where you're at and where you're going. And I realized that is the key factor of the actual action taking and the transformation, not just this amazing experience you go to, like the retreat, right? I could have gone to that retreat, came home and just forgot about it. Yeah. I had to continuously take action, get those coaches, have someone, I could call and check up on me and I check up on them. It's a two-way street, of course, right? So you're right. The accountability is really the key element of actually like going that next step. And I don't see how people could do it without it, to be honest. Because, people say you're your own boss. No, you're not, because you can lay yourself off. You can take the day off whenever you want. You're really not your own accountability partner.
No, absolutely not. And yes, I have same thing. My coaches, my support groups, my masterminds, my you name it. And honestly, I every year about the time I'm renewing everything, I give thought to, am I at a place where I don't actually need to invest this much money? But I am not, and I probably never will be, because I think, my coaches have their own accountability partners and their coaches have so it's just, it is just something that I think business owners need. I mean, when you're working in a company, you have so much structure around you and bosses that you're accountable for and everything else. And so Yeah, we need to build that into our businesses. So speaking of that, because you do help small business owners, um, tell me a little about, who you help and how you help them.
Yeah, I will. But before I do, I just want to thank you for being honest about you also having your partners, your coaches, your masterminds. Because I think, unless we say it and we're like, hey, we also get our help, like, and we also have to make a decision. I love actually specifically when you said you do pull back and decide, like, do I still need this? And do I still need that? And I think that is so critically important in regards to leaning in and stepping into a really fulfilled year, because you made a decision like, no, I am going to give it another year, or I'm going to give it another 6 months. And if you made that decision, just commit to it. Like, now don't be like, oh, but it's this much or that much. Yeah, but you already said that you wanted to do it, that it's worth the next 6 months investment. Just do it. And as soon as you release the need of having to say, oh, but it's this much or it's that much, and you're just like all in, that's where the magic happens. It's like when you release the fact that it costs this much, and instead of say, I'm investing in my next 6 months and my next transformation, like, you just completely change the dynamics of what that experience is going to be like. So I love that you said that, because that's huge.
Well, I love that you just said that, because it's so interesting too. Because, a lot of people will join programs. This is so off the topic, but I just have to say it anyway. They'll join programs, me included, that are big investments. And then they'll evaluate it at the end of the year as like, well, did I make that money back plus more? What was my return on that investment? But I used to really struggle with that, because sometimes there was a year when there wasn't that much return on investment. But it's so much more than that. It's the community that you build. And I have met the most amazing people, as I'm sure you have, through these kinds of, actions. And there's so much more to it. A lot of intangibles, as well as, of course you want to have a return on investment that's financial, but there's a lot more to it. So now it's funny that you were talking about that kind of angst, because it's so much easier now to look at the bigger picture and not get so caught up in, the actual dollars of that particular investment. So kind of interesting.
Absolutely. I love it. And that's why I also do goal setting with my clients, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And I always say, we're going to do qualitative goals and quantitative goals. And they're like, right away, they want to do quantitative goals, right? Right. The revenue and the profit, and, how many more subscribers and how many followers and what does the metrics look like? And I go, okay, I know that's where you want to start, but let's actually go with the qualitative. How is this going to help the quality of your life? How is it going to help the quality of how you're going to serve your community? How is this going to help the quality of, X, Y, and Z? And right away, we help them. And I love how we talk a little bit about mindset today. Right away, they just like pulled away from like only wanting to talk about money, like actual money, right? And they see money as like, oh, so money can be a qualitative factor, not only a quantitative factor. And it's like, yes, it's the quality of what you're creating, not only the quantity. You can have 5 amazing clients or 50 amazing clients. It doesn't matter if those 5 amazing clients are all like number 1 quality clients, right? So yeah.
Love it. That's great. And, of course, time is the other currency that people really, small business owners especially, they might be making money and they might be running out of time. And that whole equation doesn't work that well. So, okay. So back to some of the things that you're teaching your students.
Yeah. So I would say, I'll just use an example of one of my signature programs. It's called Bookkeepers Bootcamp and Mastermind. And what I've done is I've created programs, but I'll just use this example since it's really our signature one that we do once a year. And what we do is we take the bookkeeper, who's the ideal client, the ideal audience, the focus, which is also important as an entrepreneur that we talk a lot about, even to my bookkeepers, that they're like, well, I'm a bookkeeper. Isn't that focus? And I go, but a bookkeeper for who? Who are you serving? Are you serving service providers? Are you serving e-commerce? Are you serving dentists or doctors or contractors? And so my ideal audience in most of my programs are bookkeepers. And what we do is we take them through a 12-week journey, and we actually take them from mindset, So I loved how you said your goal setting starts with vision and mission and why. And that's why I actually say we have to build their inner value first, because many financial professionals, Michelle, I'm sure, either you can relate or you've heard it. We struggle with our inner value, right? And how are we going to go out there and share our outer value, which is really $1, right? Whether it's an hour or whether it's a package for how much a month, if we're struggling with the inside. And so we start there first, and then we literally take them through this 12-week journey. I have a community leader that is in all of my programs with me, and it's a very hybrid experience. It's online, it's virtual. You have me, you have my community leader. We actually do training, and we also break into masterminds, and we actually also do full-blown implementation. So every week you have to take action on something you learned and literally like physically bring it back. So now technically I would say they'd have to bring a chart of accounts back, or they'd have to bring a trial balance back, or they'd actually have to bring how they're going to capture their next client. What is their lead capture form? So they literally will take action over those 12 weeks. So that way they can step into the business that they're designing for themselves.
Nice. I love that. So is Master Your Books, that is specifically for bookkeepers, or is that for anybody who wants to understand?
Yeah, so Master Your Books is the learning center. And really, I have two key programs. I have one for bookkeepers, which is that hybrid, like live implementation mastermind experience. And then I have the entrepreneur. And for them, they have self-directed courses. So they can take one, like, for instance, there's one called Tax Ready Books, which is a self-directed course where I, obviously it's all in module format. I pop in and pop out, but they also get an experience with me where they get a boot camp that we can kind of walk through the course. Because what I've realized, and I'm sure I've gotten hundreds of courses, but if someone's not keeping me accountable in that course, it's very difficult to complete it.
Yeah.
So that course will actually get the accountability more from a monthly perspective, versus the bookkeeper program is literally a 12-week one-on-one experience with, your peers essentially.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because I'm imagining people listening are thinking, well, they're bookkeepers. Don't they know how to run their business? But the thing is, bookkeeping and understanding financial information and putting it together for people, that's what they know. But for anybody who has any expertise like that, actually running the business is a whole separate set of skills, which
Absolutely.
I find interesting because it sounds like they would know how to run a business. But just like dentists and just like anybody else, the whole business part is a completely separate animal. So interesting.
Yeah, well, and if you think about it, so, I would say the majority of the members that join me, I really have a diverse membership. And the reason why I say that is because I'll have my CPAs, I'll have my enrolled agents, I'll have my MBAs that came from, let's say, private industry. And you're right, they don't know how to run a business. They also don't know how to go get clients because they've had an amazing corporate job for many, many years. And now they're jumping into entrepreneurship, financially literate, thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
But then entrepreneurial literate, no. And so they're awesome because they are just so on fire. But then I have my entrepreneurial folks that they do have that fire to be an entrepreneur, but they're struggling on the actual literacy part. So how do we tie everything together? What does it look like to see the whole cycle of a business's accounting from beginning to end? I always call it from A to Z, start to finish. And so then those members are in there. And the beautiful dynamic, Michelle, is that let's say the higher educated CPAs, EAs, MBAs, or just higher educated in accounting and principles, they will help the ones that are struggling with the principles, but then the entrepreneurial ones will help them with their mindset. So it's like, I always say AIBM as if by magic. It's something I really can't, and I will never say I create on my own. It's serendipity. It happens amongst one another. And so, yeah, that's what happens in our programs.
Yeah, I love that, as if by magic. That's so fun.
Yeah.
So what are most of the people that come to you, are they starting out, or are they established business owners who are kind of stuck?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the bookkeeper programs that I have, again, either the 12-week or I have 5-week accelerators where essentially it's that 12-week, but people don't want to do 12 weeks. So I break it into smaller programs, accelerator programs. They're, like I said, they're usually, I would say, if I broke them into two ideal members, it's that, financially literate, kind of high-end knowledge skill set in the accounting tax world, but they haven't been entrepreneurs before. And so I'm literally showing them from how to do the new client discovery, assess a client, all the way to closing the client and then serving the client. And again, they've only done that, let's say, from a corporate umbrella, but never for themselves. And then the other member are completely starting from scratch. Now, I will be really honest. I do expect some financial literacy background, just because we go straight into, kind of a financial literacy language and conversation.
Yeah.
And so you need to know your debits and credits. You need to know basic accounting principles. And guess what? I've told them when they're like, well, I want to join your program. I go, I actually have a self-directed course just for small business literacy. So if you want to learn financial literacy, go in there, learn your financial statements, your debits and credits, your chart of accounts, and then join my program, because if not, you can get lost. Because we go right in. I mean, it's 12 weeks of that's why I call it a boot camp. Yeah. It's heavy lifting, it's your MBA in bookkeeping, essentially.
Yeah. I love that. And the financial literacy, sometimes people think they're financially literate when they go into business, and they're really not. There are things I recently there's an example of somebody who started setting up a bunch of new businesses to go along with his business. And somebody had told him, you need these separate. So he's setting up all of these businesses without really recognizing that you're going to have new tax returns. You're going to have to keep different sets of books. I mean, there's just this whole thing going on that, there was such a lack of financial literacy, actually, even though I've been in business for decades, doing well. Yeah. But, just sort of a lack of general knowledge about how this was, what this was going to lead to.
Yeah.
So,
and sadly, probably a lack of advice. So that's something that, I work a lot with. And it's a mission. It's literally our mission at Master Books, that we do believe that every business owner needs that heart-centered, human-centered advisor that's going to be like, just tell me what you know, and then I'll let you know what you don't know, and we'll take it from there. And I think when I get most emotional is when I have my very highly educated individuals out there tell me oh my gosh, Mariette, I didn't know that. And I'm talking about Harvard graduates, really high out there. And they're just and then I tell them, by the way, you didn't need to know that, because in your prior life, you didn't need to know this.
Right.
But guess what? As an entrepreneur, you now need to know this. And so the fact that someone is vulnerable enough to share, okay, I'm going to come down on my pedestal. I don't care what school I graduated from. I don't care how many accolades I have. I don't know. And then I could meet them there. Right. And every one of my members, I tell them, you need to be a champion to your business owner. Don't make them feel bad about what they know or what they don't know. You literally need to meet in the middle and figure out what that looks like. And that's a huge underlying value of us, is just being able to be vulnerable and be able to be honorable and have that integrity of, being kind and saying, okay, you didn't know that. Okay, now you know. So let's get to work. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, last week we had a woman on who was actually a talking about grief and loss and the impact on her money. And she brought up, the shame around money. And how much there's a lot of shame around what we don't know about money or how we handle money. And, so there's not a lot of conversation, because people do feel ashamed to talk about everything from, I mean, forever it's been, people shouldn't know how much you make, and people shouldn't, all of these things that you shouldn't talk about. And all of a sudden you realize that you're not having conversations that you need to be having with people. So you're right. Having somebody who is compassionate and understanding and, wants people to open up is one of the most valuable things, I think. So,
I love that. And I would say that's what I'm most excited about is, when they come in, I mean, and you can tell if you just watch me or stalk me online, I talk a lot about vulnerability. I say that bookkeeping is the most intimate relationship in business, and people get the eyebrow intimate, that's a little odd, but it really is, because people are getting naked with you. Yeah. They're getting naked with you financially, and it's incredibly vulnerable. I don't know what other word to use other than vulnerable and intimacy. And I think once we kind of just step into that and we're okay with that, we can have the conversations you said. I'm in this amazing group called Soul Circles with my accountability partner. Her name's Rubina Binion, and she kind of leads us into the conversations about, hey, if you want to drop it in the chat, like, what is that number you want to go towards this year, or what, how much you want to now start billing a client, or that new contract you're going for, like, what is that number? Like, we're so scared to share what that is. I don't care if it's 300 or 3,000 or 300,000, but like, as soon as you release it and say it, it's like there's so much empowerment in that. Even if it's just writing it in the little Zoom chat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know. And it's, again, so much stuff comes up, so much about your relationship with money comes up when you set these financial goals. And there's that inner voice in your head that's coming along to tell you that, that's impossible. You've never done that before. What's going to make you think you can do it now? I mean, it's just so crazy how that works. But I think it's really important to have somebody like you teaching people the basics and beyond the basics, really, but starting with the basics. I do love that you start at the beginning with people and give them a good foundational framework, from which to learn more. But when you miss some of the pieces that I think you have in your program, you're going to be jumping into things without that foundation, and that doesn't work at all. So, I really commend you for helping people to just have all that really important work that they need to do and need to understand.
And thank you for that. It's, if you go to the website, it says make fundamentals matter. And I to be honest, in the beginning, I struggled with that, because they're like, honestly, I personally, again, are mine. Like, why am I assuming people don't know the basics? Why am I assuming people don't know fundamentals? And what I stopped saying, or what I started not doing is say, Mariette, stop saying what I don't know. Instead, start listening. And so I would listen really intentionally and intently to my members. And they would say exactly what you said. Yeah, I've been so shameful and embarrassed to say that I missed that part. I was just boots on the ground. I was, just getting clients, and I didn't really understand how those taxes match the books. And I didn't really tie the numbers back. And I didn't do the full accounting life cycle you're teaching. But guess what? I was too embarrassed to tell anybody. And now finally you're creating this brave space to be like, yeah, I didn't know that. Thank you for showing that, and so now it's like, I keep on don't feel bad about saying that I start with the basics and I take you from there, or we're going to make fundamentals matter. If you think about it, everybody needs to have that foundational framework.
Right.
And so, and eventually the more I lean into feeling comfortable with building foundations and then building them up, of course, then those people will come in. They'll feel safe to come in. The more I feel comfortable saying, yes, that's what we work on. But I did struggle with that, Michelle, for a while, like saying, am I actually now discounting their education? Am I saying these people don't know things? So I struggled with the language a little bit, because I didn't want to ever make people feel bad and act like they didn't know what they were doing. So it's this constant like language massaging, making sure that I'm speaking to the right people without like offending them, I guess.
Right. It's so interesting. And I'm sure people who do know a fair amount will come in there and still be like, I either needed that reminder, or I forgot about that kind of thing, or it will be new, because again, you can fly right past these things and do okay for a while, and maybe really well even, but you're still going to be grateful to go back to that, I think, and just have, if nothing else, a refresher on it. So, and somebody else's perspective. So, I think that's super important. I think the world of, there's so much talk about how people are financially illiterate, but, and now we live in this world where there's so much information, you can barely like sift through to figure out what you need. So, it continues to kind of be problematic to get the right education in this. So I think you're really onto something with doing this for people. It's really necessary. And so,
well, thank you. Thank you for that. And I will just end by saying, you're right. I mean, I love all of my members equally, just like I love my 3 children equally. But I will say, when I have those members that come in and I know that I know their level basically, and they are open enough to be like, oh my gosh, Mariette, like, thank you for that. You just kind of brought that back to my attention. And I was going so quickly, I missed that part, or I never tried that little tech hack before. And what happens is they literally light the fire of the other members, because they're like, if she at this level, because all the other members are looking at her way up there, right? They're looking at Michelle up here and, Samantha down here. And Michelle just was completely vulnerable on her ha-ha moment. And all the other members were like, if Michelle can do it, I can do it.
Oh, I love
so
that.
those are my, literally, I usually, by the way, I tear up when that happens.
Yeah, no, that is great. I actually would love to do the course and see what I'm not doing, because we don't do everything we know we should do, regardless of what we know and where we are too. So some things you do have to go back and say, I really need to do that. But yeah, I love this, Mariette. So I really want you to let people know how to contact you. Not only are you, very well educated and very smart and have a lot of experience with this, but I think people can tell from listening to you what a lovely personality you have and how truly heartfelt, you are in this business. So I think that is extremely attractive to people wanting to come in and learn more. But how can they find you?
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm trying to keep it simple. Everything lives at masteryourbooks.com now. So you can go there. You could see, again, my two signature courses would be Tax Ready Books is for the entrepreneur. And of course, my bookkeeper accelerator programs, you'll see them all right there. I do have a really cool, just wanted to mention a really cool goal setting freebie, since we started with goal setting. And I actually want to join Michelle's I don't know what she called it, but it was kind of like an intensive day, which I'm super excited about. So I know she said February something, so I'll be calling her after this about that. And also, really quickly, Michelle, I definitely need to hear more about the money date. So maybe we won't talk about it now, but I am so curious on what you mean about having a date with your money. So, but anyways, back to Master Your Book. So yeah, right on there, I have a goal setting freebie. You can jump in. And honestly, if you jump into that freebie, it's a great way for us to start the conversation. You're going to see how I teach. You're going to get a couple of emails from me, and we can just start the conversation. Everything comes from me, not from a robot. So, you could tell the language I use is just like you and I are having a cool conversation, and then we could take it from there.
That's fantastic. And yes, I will be, so to get your goal setting worksheet, go to masteryourbooks.com.
Yep. And it just pops up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fabulous. That's great. We will be in touch. I would love to talk to you about all of those things. And thank you so much for your time today. I really had a wonderful time talking to you, and I think everybody should connect with you and see what you have going on and follow you as well. Are you on some social media? I'm sure you are.
Yes, I am. So I'm trying to get focus only on a few because I'm everywhere, but probably hang out with me on Instagram. I'm trying to hang out a little bit more on there. And of course, Facebook, because a lot of my friends are there and Michelle's there. This will be there live eventually. So yeah, hang out with us on Facebook and Instagram.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, Mariette, thank you again. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And you so inspiring, really. I'm inspired. So I think the listeners will be as well.
Thank you so much, Michelle. This was amazing. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
And listeners, thank you for being here. We love having you on the Money and You Show. Please, if you enjoy the show, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find it streaming on the Limit Free Life YouTube channel, ubngo.com, where we are broadcasting from, and on my Limit Free Life Facebook page. Any questions, anything you'd like to talk to me about, you can reach me at michelle@limitfreelife.com. Love to hear your comments and questions and see what else we can bring to you in the future here at the Money and You Show. So with that, we'll see you next week.